So talk about a little bit about how is Black trying to impact this
Yeah.
work?
You know, so much of Black's work, I would say, was written by the 9-year-old Cokethea, the sophomore Cokethea, the high school Cokethea, the Cokethea that flunked out. Surprisingly, I went to a HBCU my freshman year and didn't do so well, and my
Mm.
parents made me come home. Um, but so much of this story about I wanted to be unapologetic about the needle must move for these kids. And while there's been a lot of reform efforts and there's definitely been great organizations, what we've seen from the data is that there is a very small movement for our most marginalized kids. And oftentimes, Black students are showing up at the bottom of these academic indicators. And when they are leading in an indicator, it's usually a negative outcome like
Mm.
dropout or suspensions or expulsions or not on grade level. And what we know about our history, right, is when you think about the founding of HBCUs, when
Right.
you think about segregated schooling and doctors and lawyers and universities, like our freedom, our quality of life, our ability to chase the American dream was always tied to education. These are people who persisted to educate themselves and their families when they were threatened to be hung from trees.
Right.
Like education is serious
Right.
to Black people. And so to see our kids and these systems failing our kids, not that our kids can't learn or not that they're not beautiful, brilliant dreamers and scholars and want to have everything that American life offers them, but they are often cut off very early in life from getting access to all those protective factors, including education. So Black was like, let's just focus, let's just name that. Like, I know people want to hear great stories and we need to celebrate that. And we all know, as a testament of our own life, people that have succeeded in spite of or despite of. But if we really want to have an equitable, stronger, thriving, robust economy in Kansas City, then we have got to say we need a laser like focus on moving the academic needle for Black kids. And so Black,
Absolutely.
that's our mission to significantly improve the academic, economic, social, emotional life outcomes of Black children and their families.
Fantastic. Oh, so wow. And are you finding yourself um, so you're very focused on Kansas, Black is focused on Kansas City, but are you finding that there's a natural extension to being a part of that national conversation, right? Or is there a way you're bringing that national conversation into Kansas City?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I thought about like, let me start in a place I know the most about, right? Because so much of education and schooling and families is nestled, like I said, in communities. And we believe, or I believe at Black, that we don't exist because we have the solution, right?
Right.
We're like, how do we convene? How do we network? How do we leverage the human capital of our community? We have experts in our space that
Right.
understand. There's a theory that those that are most proximate to an issue or a challenge are uniquely positioned to have the best solution, right? And
Absolutely.
so certainly there's this eye toward nationally, what are we seeing working in other urban communities? Because this is happening across the country, right? So
Right.
there's always this idea of like, how do we check? How do we grow? How do we build our capital? But our focus is, our history in Kansas City is very complex. We have like over 13 school districts that feed into metropolitan Kansas City. And most of that happened out of white flight and running from integration, right? And
Right.
so how has that our city shaped and sustained race, racism, segregation, poverty? And what ways and who must we bring to the table, which are diverse? Allyship to say,
Mhm.
hey, can I leverage, Andrea, your political and social and human capital to help us solve this, but center the needs of families and kids. We center that.
Absolutely.
We follow their lead around what they need to see. And so what we've seen in education is families are not often at the center. They're
Absolutely.
just not. They're not at the center. And so we don't always think from
Mm.
Kansas City public school system lens. We have Blue Springs, Independence, Lee Summit, Hickman Center. And what we found through our data that I'll be happy to share and anyone can come, we have it actually on YouTube in one of our candidate and campaigners videos, is there's not one school system in our region that are getting quality outcomes for Black kids. In fact, when we think about like our outer ring suburbs, Blue Springs, which is a blue ribbon school district, has the highest outcomes of students that are Black that are on grade level for reading and math. And that's only 45%. It's only 45% of
Wow.
Black students in Blue Springs are on grade level for reading compared to 71% of white students in the same school district in a
Right.
community that doesn't have a lot of those challenges that you hear about urban, right? So
Right.
we're saying Black folks, this is not a move out to a better community problem.
And that's the highest in our region, the
That's the
45%.
highest, yes,
Mm.
45%. I mean, if you look at the state in terms of the percentage of Black kids in the state of Missouri who are on grade level, it is abysmal. Like,
Right. Huh.
so we try to use data in a way to unpack, to not lay blame. We say, if you are a scholar of history, you would say, hey, guess what? When integration happened, um, the Supreme Court closed Black schools, right? And white schools remained open, and Black children, not teachers, Black children had to integrate into that system
Mm-hmm.
that did not want them, that was not structured for them, and that was not there to benefit them.
Right.
It was forced on that system. And
Right.
over time, every group that has had to fight, whether it's students with disability, the IDEA Act, right? Whether
Right.
it is language diversity, whether it is sexual orientation, whether it is nationality, every group that has had to fight for access into this system are not getting outcomes on par for who the system was
It's
designed
all
for,
for. Yeah. Because the system is working as designed.
as
Right.
designed.
Yeah.
It is our
Absolutely.
job to interrupt that, and we cannot do that if we are afraid to talk about race and are afraid to really historically see the system for what it was. When we talk about education from 1776, we say, hey, guess what? When Thomas Jefferson, when they created the two-track system, it was for the labored and the learned. So
Mm-hmm.
even from its very genesis, when it was open to white males, right? It was still sorting by class.
Right. Right.
Then it provided access. Okay, African Americans, but you go to school over here. Okay, now we are giving you access. You can come in, but let's sort. Okay,
Right.
students with language diversity or students with disabilities, you can come in, but you got to be segregated in these classes. And so
Right.
we know that that was differential treatment. So we got to see the system that it isn't the great equalizer my parents believed it would be. Its genesis was not to be equal and fair and inclusive.
Right. Right. No, that's yeah.
So it has evolved. And you
Yeah.
know why it has evolved? Because people like you and me and regular, ordinary people pushed on that system and say, no, 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 no. I too want the American dream and I am a part of the democratic ideal and you must serve me. That took people pushing
Right.
on that system to do it. And we're not there yet. We got to continue to push and not see that as an attack on a system or people or somehow you don't care about kids. No, we got to continue to push on the system so it can realize the dream that it said that it was for us. And we ain't
Absolutely.
there. We ain't quite there yet.
We're not
So that's
there.
what Black wants to do.
Right. And so how does you mentioned before families, and so I assume that parents play a crucial role for you. What kind of role do you see parents playing in this process?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we even started Black, when I was still working over at School Smart, we worked to take community organizers and went on a listening tour with parents. And we realized that, hey, guess what? Parents actually are not quite understanding the power that they have in terms of like a school exists for you.
Right.
If there are no kids there, they would not be operating. And you actually own this system. You are a taxpayer. So if and this is yours. So if I was an heir to Oprah and Oprah opened up a hotel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am like Oprah's favorite niece. I'm not walking in there with the same thing that some random person off the street. Like, oh no, listen, I am an heir. I am Miss Winfrey's niece. I expect certain things, right? I expect my voice to be centered, for my decisions to be valued. And so our parents were like, you pay taxes, you own this system of schools. It is not about what a school says that it must have. It is about what you say you need. And so we spent 2 years organizing and teaching parents about how schools are structured. Where is the power? How are they funded? What is the role has been in Kansas City as it regards to race and place and education? What does our history tells us? And then we start saying, well, what does quality look like to you?
Right.
And what are your hopes and dreams for your baby? When you look at your kid, what do you hope for them? And what do you think education's role is helping to fulfill that dream? That's how we start. And
Absolutely.
then we compare our hopes and dreams and our desires and what quality looks like to what parents experience. And then we say,
Mm.
okay, how do we take these uh, problems, and then how do we cut out issues? Poverty is a huge problem. Uh, Failing school systems. But what issues are within those? Because issues allow you to put your hands around it, to quantify it, to identify who's in position to influence this issue. And then we build our base from there. And so, BLAQ's core mission is that students and families are always centered. Period. Dot. We
Absolutely.
want families to lead. We want families to run for elected offices. We want families to serve on commissions. We want families to go to Jeff City. We want families to create our legislative agenda. We want families to put forth policy for both school systems, district and charter, to take a look at. We want parents to revise policies, practices, and protocols that are harmful to Black kids. We expect parents to be in all of these spaces.
Right. I love it. Thank you,
Yeah.
man. All right. So you've given us a lot of deep thoughts here today, powerful thoughts. And I'm really excited that you are doing the work that you're doing. Full disclosure, I had a chance to be a part of one of your processes, which was the Parent Power Lab.
Yes.
And even as somebody who grew up in Kansas City and experienced DSEG, right? My friends were getting moved out and we had to, push back. There was still so much I learned in that process. And so I really thank you guys for the gift that you gave me there. So I'm excited to see how we make some change in Kansas City.
Awesome.
But I want to step back now and just ask you a few just fun things. So do you have a favorite, or maybe not favorite, but one of your favorite restaurants in Kansas City?
I feel like you would get thrown out of Kansas City if you do not say my favorite restaurant. It better be barbecue. Gabe's, Peachtree, Nisi. Certainly, there is a whole host of excellent restaurants, but I would love to walk through my community and not be pushed down because I didn't talk about Kansas City barbecue. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, they top of my list, so I get it. Hey, it's real.
Yeah.
What about a favorite place to travel?
I didn't realize how important travel really is to my self-care until we couldn't do it, right? And I was quarantined. I was like, oh my goodness. And I think about, different places for different reasons. If I want to like relax, I'm thinking someplace near water, maybe West Coast, California, San Francisco. These are places that, are beautiful. And then when I think about the first time I thought I was real grown and, like I wanted to be cultured, I went to New York, right? Because it's like, I want to go to Harlem and I want to go to Manhattan and I want to see Times Square and I want to go to a show, and it felt real grown. And then, when I think about, partying with friends, I think down south, right? You feel like you
New
need to go down
Orleans.
south. But yes, my travel has been hijacked by a 7-year-old. So anywhere where there's some Disney characters, we are certainly going.
I
But
love it.
I would love as I'm coming into, when you get 40 plus, come into a different level of understanding about yourself and reflecting over your life. And it is almost as feeling super urgent the deeper I get in this work to go to the motherland, to like
Mm,
take my shoes off in the soil, to hear my ancestors. Like that is becoming super important for me. Just when you recognize, like, you have your career that you plan for, and then you have what God tells you to do. And when you cross into that space, you realize that it is a spiritual battle you're fighting. And so you cannot go in with the same ways that you might have entered in to traditional careers. And I just think that this is spirit work. I know what my
right.
spiritual orientation is, but anybody who wants to love and make sure that kids thrive and want to love on people and serve them is definitely spirit filled work. And so I want to go to South Africa. I have never been and I want to go.
Yeah, then hey, you got to put it on your bucket list. Well, it's on your bucket list. You got to make it happen.
Got to make it happen.
Um, okay, and then one last thing. Is there a piece of media that you're watching right now, like something on Netflix, a book you're reading, podcast?
So this is a debate that I have. I tend to not watch series because I get emotionally invested in characters. And when they like now these days, the star can die. And I just am not with this. Grey's Anatomy was like, I was so about Grey's Anatomy, and then Olivia Pope, and then that people started dying. And I was just like, okay. So what I'm trying to get into is really audiobooks. Like I'm reading this or listening to this book on slavery and capitalism. I think we're in a racially charged space. And the more that we really understand how America was built and the first credit and income were slaves,
Mhm.
and what does that mean for these founding institutions and housing and banking and home lending and education. I think that that's a key to help us solve as America, this greatest dilemma, or the bad thing that we've never dealt with, that we never talked about. And so as a counselor, you understand that when you have trauma that happens to you, if you keep that bottled up and move throughout life without ever unpacking that and getting some healing, you are certainly going to head to self-destruction. And so I take that approach around actually digging into race and having conversations for healing so that we can get to the other side if that's where we want to go. Or we got to be honest about kind of like this privilege and this racist system. We're in a capitalistic system, so I like advantage. But at least we can have the conversation. So, but
It's
works,
real.
what I'm saying? James Baldwin, Toni Morrison. You know what I'm actually into that you might have read that I stumbled upon
Uh-huh.
was Octavia Butler.
Oh,
I'm, I,
yes.
I'm like, where have I been where I never experienced? I had this excerpt in a fellowship that I was in, and you had to write a letter to your future self. And
Uh-huh.
I started looking at some of her works, like sci-fi fiction, but this idea of, like coming from a legacy of enslaved Africans that dreamed of free people, like the power of dreaming of freedom and fueling people to it. I'm like, oh, I need this as I start to dream through an education system where race is and zip code and economic status is not an indicator for your life expectancy and well-being and how you will be
Absolutely.
treated. So I'm
Absolutely.
waiting on my book to arrive so I can lean into Octavia Butler.
Yes, yes. Oh yeah. She has had an impact on so many people over the
Yeah.
years, like other writers who have just grown because she existed, right? So that's fantastic. I'm glad you're checking her out.
Yes, I'm excited. It's like a kid waiting for Santa Claus. Like, is my book here? My book here, my book here. And I hope I can actually, like understand. I hear that it's just so deep that I'm hoping that I can absorb it in a way that
Yeah.
will be,
Allow yourself to take it slow. Which one did you get? The parable of the,
yes, of the
okay.
soul, yes.
Yeah. And that's, I
And
read that
kindred
one.
spirits. I think I got two. Is
And
it one that's
kindred.
called kindred?
Okay.
Okay, kindred.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. You starting with some great ones there. So,
Yes. So
well, thank
I'm
you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And, you know, we're going to put this together and help support Black History Month, but hopefully it will last past that, right? Because Black History Month is not just one month of the year. I mean, we're Black all year round. I want to honor Carter G. Woodson for creating what he created, but you know, we are celebrating all year round. So
yeah.
thank you so much for showing up and giving us your best fire. I love it.
Thank you for inviting me. You know, I'm still in the beginning of all of this, of leading and learning and just moving. And so I appreciate that you provide a space that